our bodies dictate a lot of our unconscious behavior. Now, something that goes unsaid a lot within psychology is the importance of the body. A lot of people focus on, the mind, our cognition, how we think, patterns of thought, all of this type of stuff. But usually the body goes unsaid. We don't really talk much about it, even though, we have body language, which makes up, you could say, like 80% of the way we communicate to people and how we understand other people is through body language, more so than just mere speech and words themselves through sentences and all this type of stuff, So when it comes to psychology, the body is kind of rejected quite a bit in the understanding of the individual's character structure. Wilhelm Reich and Alexander Lowen, who continued on Wilhelm Reich's work in bioenergetics, probably some of the most insightful work in psychoanalysis, I would say, comes from them, because they really understood that the body, depending on the body type that you have, actually indicates the character structure you're going to have, more likely. You have endomorphs, ectomorphs, and mesomorphs, right? And that, depending on which one you are, dictates what type of character structure you're going to have. Are you going to be more fearful, more angry, more of both of those types of things mixed in together? And what type of neurotic holding patterns are you going to develop depending on which tendency you're going to go towards through your insecurities and stuff like this? And this is very interesting, because I would say, even with the people I've worked with so far through the coaching program and stuff like that, they usually are one character type, you could say, if you analyze these things through just a Wilhelm Reich's model of kind of character structures and all of this type of stuff. And this is what I want to kind of get into on this video today, is to talk about the importance of the body, and that the body is often the shadow when it comes to most people, because we are not really integrated with our bodies, and we need to be more integrated with our bodies. A lot of the unconscious is rested within the body, and we're not aware of it. So we need to figure out how to actually integrate with that. And the only way we can do that is by understanding what kind of character structure we have, and then what type of body type we have, and how those two things align, so that we can understand our own unconscious patterns or our own kind of repressed behaviors, basically, that we are not even aware of. So let's think about the anxious man, for example, someone who's very anxious. Usually the anxious man is going to be a very skinny man. And this is, in terms of body types, this is the endomorph. The endomorph body type. And usually you're born with a body type. Interestingly enough, you kind of grow into one through adolescence and stuff like this. And it does indicate which type of, not exactly what type of personality structure you're going to have, but it indicates what type of tendencies you're going to go towards, just naturally through your own personality. And usually someone who's very skinny is also they repress a lot of energy within. They usually inhale and they have a fear and freeze response to reality. Like they bring in and they hold in energy, and then they're very anxious. And then they don't let it out. They don't express it outwards. And this is why you have introversion, for example. It's like a contraction, but no release, basically. So there's no release for the anxious man, who's this kind of very skinny body type. Usually hold in all that energy, and then there is no release. So where does that energy go? Usually that energy gets kind of transferred into the mind, and then it goes towards just mental thought, imagination, sometimes creativity, sometimes rumination. It was probably rumination, because that just influences the anxiousness for the individual. And it kind of just goes towards that kind of tendency, basically. So this is one part of, like how the energy of that individual would function, or where the energy would go. And then what else is kind of characteristic of this kind of individual is, they could be seen as very calm, very kind of low key, They're very easygoing. They don't get angry very often. They are very quiet, silent individuals. They're usually always in their head. They're always thinking about something. Maybe they're more inclined towards intellectual thinking because of this. And they're not very much in their bodies. They don't know how to get into their bodies. So they're always usually thinking about something. So this is like, if you could think of it in like a stereotype, think of like the nerdy science kid or the scientist, he's kind of someone who rejects his own body and he's just thinking all the time. And you can just tell by just looking at him. You're like, yeah, you don't hit the gym. You don't work out. You don't do anything really physical with your hands. You're always thinking about stuff. So this is that type of individual. But we can learn a lot about their insecurities and their oppressions by just understanding the problems that come along with the type of the body type that they have. Now, you're not exactly, when it comes to these three body types, you can kind of merge into these different forms if you can understand what your weaknesses are, and then if you want to develop upon those weaknesses to try and turn them into strengths, for example. So I would say the endomorph and the ectomorph, they can kind of merge, like if the endomorph, which I believe is the skinny, right? The very skinny guy, if he wants to work on his physique and develop these tendencies towards anxiousness and kind of move through them so that he can become more charismatic and more expressive, he can then merge into that other body type where he can develop more musculature, he can develop more strength within his physique. He can hold himself down a bit more. He could be more grounded, and if this individual kind of works on that kind of thing, then he can also improve certain personality traits and not be as anxious as he used to be, So this is kind of the way you can actually evolve and change your personality and improve it in different ways by blending more with these other body types and kind of merging into them through adaptation, through self-improvement. So that's one way you could do this. Now, I don't want to get into the other ones because there's a whole load of other stuff in terms of character structures with the other types of body types that you're kind of born into having. So let's look into what actually happens when the body is so unconscious, right? And harbors the shadow itself is that we develop image management and we develop personas. And usually personas and image management is very manipulative, but it's usually born out of insecurity for the person who's playing through this kind of, image management manipulation game with other people. So just to give an example, like even the person who's very anxious and it has this kind of way about themselves, they appear self-controlled, they appear gentle, they appear calm, but in reality, they're incapable of expressing any genuine emotion through the body, whether it be anger or it just be joy. So sometimes they might even further go into this and actually try and rationalize how they, virtuously better than these other people who do have kind of problems with expressing anger and bodily expressions of emotion. Because they'll be like, well, no, I'm much more settled, I'm much more calm, I'm much more well put, but really this is like kind of false virtue signaling. They're just actually, no, you can say that, but you're just actually incapable to begin with of actually expressing any kind of emotion through your body. You can't just, proclaim that you're some sort of saint or something like this in terms of virtue. So if people really steep into this kind of insecurity, they might even rationalize why they're better than certain other people, when actually it's just a very ingenuine kind of rationalization that it doesn't hold any ground. And that's a coping mechanism, you could say. Now, the thing that becomes very interesting here is that you have this on both sides of the coin when it comes to depending what type of personality type or body structure or body type you have, is that the body always usually is the shadow. It's very unconscious. We see this all the time with just how people interact with other people. Or if someone who's very insecure in how they interact with people, and how their interaction is inauthentic because they're using image management and persona control with certain people and not with certain people because they want to give off a certain impression to that other person. And this usually to them is unconscious. They don't really realize they're doing this, but they're doing it because they are afraid of their own authenticity. And this is probably the thing that's most scary for people who are dealing with a lot of insecurity, is that the most intrusive thought they have is that they believe that their true expression, their authentic expression, is the enemy to themselves, because they are afraid of judgment and they're afraid of all of these other things that are breeding these forms of insecurity. And that's where they start not only manipulating other people by accident through image management and persona control, but they start to actually manipulate themselves and gaslight themselves, which kind of basically breeds depression, dissociation, and all of these other things that could lead to very, very negative consequences in the future if they don't try and work on these things. So let me give you some examples here of how someone who's very unconscious kind of represents their unconscious through their body, through image management, persona control, because the persona and image management is produced through body language most of the time. So they may find themselves being excessively nice to avoid conflict and be seen as likable, people-pleasing to seek approval, over-apologizing to avoid criticism and maintain peace, socially avoiding interactions to manage stresses of life, conforming to blend in and avoid judgment, feigning interest in others to ensure positive interactions. So the worst thing with all of this is that deep down, they end up feeling completely removed from who they truly want to be because they're always acting. It's the greatest enemy of themselves is authenticity. So they're always acting in the sense of, I need to do this to seek approval. I need to do this because I'm in fear of conflict. I need to do this because I'm in fear of judgment. I need to do this because I don't want to be rejected. It's always this constant persona image management game. And it's not because they want to do it. It's because they feel like they have to, because they haven't confronted the insecurities that they have and how those insecurities relate to the body. Like I was saying, the anxious man, what does the anxious man go through? The anxious man is going through problems to do with how he is not integrated with his body. So he needs to develop that integration with his body. And like I was saying, the more you do that, the more you can build confidence. And the only way you build confidence is through experience. So confidence through experience, and that causes a transition period within your personality and within your character as an individual. So experience, confidence, charisma. That's kind of how the structure goes. You have experience, that experience breeds confidence, that confidence breeds charisma, because charisma is the external expression of that confidence. And then that is when things start to change. So when it comes to someone, let's say, who is like that, someone who's anxious, someone who is in fear, they're very timid, they're introverted, their body language is always to be coiled up in some sort of ball. They're always like, looking down like this. They're not expressive. They don't breathe outwards. They don't release any energy that they're bringing in all the time. That person needs to be able to learn how to release energy outwards. And going to the gym is a perfect way of doing that, doing any form of martial arts, because that's always about energy dynamics. It's about moving the body. It's about moving energy. It's about inhaling and exhaling. It's about contraction and release. It's about movement. So the more you get in tune with the art of movement, the art of martial arts, for example, the art of kind of even bodybuilding, the more you're going to understand your body, the more you're going to understand stress, the more you're going to understand the process of failure in relation to applying it to your body to build things. These are very fundamental principles that you need to integrate so that you can at least extend or move beyond a certain body type of insecurity that you have, so that you build a stronger version of yourself. And by doing that, you can then also adapt your insecurities and improve upon them by building confidence and then charisma. So that is kind of the interesting situation with people with certain insecurities. And I think the biggest takeaway from this video, if you've gotten this far, is to understand that if you are someone who's dealing with anxiousness, the biggest intrusive thought that you probably have is that your authentic self is the enemy of yourself, which it is not. It is only perceived as such because you are not integrated with it and you believe that people are judging you, and maybe you have had certain experiences in the past that are validating that belief, but those are only things of the past. Don't eternalize that which was temporary, that was in the past, because all of this shall pass. This too shall pass. Everything shall pass, and nothing is eternal except your potential as an individual. And yeah, I mean, that's really the takeaway of this video here, is that to understand that is usually the core fear that is at place, and you need to identify and figure out and look at how you can break those intrusive thoughts down and try and understand how your insecurities are coming from maybe the type of body type you have, and how you can work through those insecurities itself. And I'd recommend you look into Alexander Lowen, bioenergetics, Wilhelm Reich, character resistance, character structures, all of that kind of stuff. It's very interesting. It's very relevant towards psychology. So if you enjoyed this video, guys, make sure to give it a like. Tell me your thoughts down below. How do you perceive the unconscious in the sense of your own expression in terms of insecurity? And of course, if you want to work on this kind of stuff with me, book in a free one-on-one call. This is really what it is all about. It's about, self-improvement in relation to psychology, not only just with cognition, but physical improvement as well. If you're someone who's very skinny, someone who's very anxious, let's say your body type is that you're skinny and you're anxious, fearful, avoidant. This is the type of stuff you want to work on. You need to figure out how to find a way into developing those aspects of yourself. And that's what I work on with people in the program, the procrastination program, because it's about fears, it's about repression, it's about fear of rejection, fear of failure, fear of all of this type of stuff. Understanding where that's coming from, understanding how you can improve your thoughts, apply good habits, make those good habits, break down bad habits, break down self-limiting beliefs, and improving yourself on a daily basis. So if that is something you want to do, make sure to book in that free one-on-one call with me, and I can talk about all the techniques to you of what we'd be focusing on to actually help improve your life for good. So if that's something you want to do, book in that free call. You can find a link right down there, and I will speak to you in the next one. Thanks for watching.